Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and today we are going to be checking out the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles IDW figures from the Loyal Subjects. So these, of course, are part of their BSTAXN line. I think that's Best Action. Best features, best articulation, best assortment. I think that's what the cool abbreviation stands for. But these right here are the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive versions. Now there are regular retail versions of these coming also. But the thing that makes these different is that they've got sort of like this grittier paint deco, got a wash on there, which I actually thought looked pretty cool on these. The regular retail ones are going to be much more clean. But I'm pretty excited to check these out because getting the IDW comic book looks in action figure form is pretty awesome, because with all of the Ninja Turtles toys that are out there now, this is something that has been lacking. So it's nice to get something totally new and totally different here that we haven't already seen. Also, I will say that I feel like these look like some of the best of the Loyal Subjects figures for Turtles so far. So we'll go ahead and open them up and we will definitely check that out. I wanted to show you guys all the awesome artwork on the boxes there. You saw both spines have some different artwork for each of the characters. And then, of course, you've got the window boxes that fully showcase our figures within. I've got all 4 turtles. I was able to buy these while I was at San Diego Comic-Con, so they were actually pretty easy to get from the Loyal Subjects booth. Let's go ahead and open them up out of these boxes, and we'll get a closer look at them. All right, we have got our brand new IDW Turtles outside of the packaging. Let's go ahead and start with the tape measure here to show you the scale of these figures. Now, the cool thing about this is these particular designs are all a bit different sized from each other, which I always like. So one thing that is really cool is they all do have totally unique sculpts, and their sizes are going to be a little bit different from one another. So Leo here stands just over 5 inches tall, while Raphael is pushing 5.5 inches. Mikey is also right at the 5-inch mark, and Donatello there is about the same height as Raphael, pushing about 5.5 inches. He's leaner and skinnier. Raph is bulkier like a tank. Leo is the most evened out. Mikey looks the smallest and the youngest of the batch. I really like that. I think the overall designs are very good here. I love seeing the unique parts between the figures. You'll even notice that, like, even with their belts and the wraps, like Mikey and Donnie have these white wraps, while Leo and Raph have the brown wraps. Interestingly, Raphael has got like a shoulder strap in this incarnation that will hold some additional accessories that I will show you in just a bit. And all of the faces are even shaped a little bit different shaped heads there, different looks on the heads. All of these, of course, inspired by the artwork of the IDW comic series, which is a very cool look for these figures. I think these look pretty dang incredible, honestly. I think the sculpts are really nicely done here. And as I mentioned when we were looking at them in the packaging, the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive versions have this wash on there, which makes them feel a little bit more gritty. I mean, you can see it really brings out the details, like all of the scratches on the front parts of the shells there. It looks really good. It does add a little bit of a gloss to it. As well, and one of the things that it does is it is going to make the joints a little sticky. Like, you can see how hard it is to kind of turn the head on Leonardo here. It's the same with all of them. Out of the packaging, they were all pretty stuck, and I would definitely attribute that to this wash that is on the figures there. So just be a little careful with that when you first pull them out of the packaging. It makes them look a little dirty. Like, Leo looks extra dirty on top of his head there. But all in all, I actually do like that wash. I think it makes them look pretty cool. It really does bring out all of those details. I think the sculpts on these guys are pretty great. So let's go ahead and talk about the articulation with these figures, and then we're going to get into all the accessories and stuff that comes with each one of the figures here. So the articulation is the same on all of the figures, but obviously their body types, they'll feel a little bit different through and through, but I think everything is pretty much the same across the board with these figures. So the head, I showed you, they're pretty stuck at first, and I will say that the ball joint that they sit on is pretty tight as well, but you can still turn the heads left and right and down. They don't get too high of like an up look, but it just kind of rolls around on that very standard ball joint up there. The arms at the shoulders can go upwards, downwards. We also have that nice little butterfly joint there, so you can see the arms move forwards and backwards slightly. They do get hindered by hitting the shell on the back, so they don't go back too far, but they do come forward a bit. We've got swivels at the bicep. We have double joints at the elbow. And I have talked about the elbows and the knee joints on some other Loyal Subjects figures before, like that Krang. And I did always feel like they looked a little weird with the big giant cuts in there. I will say these do look a bit better. It's still a little present, and you'll notice it more, I think more in the knees and on some other than others, but that's not as bad. There's not like big giant cuts in there like we have seen in the past. The swivel at the wrist, there's also a hinge joint there at the wrist, but you might have noticed how easy that hand fell out. One of the things I'm experiencing with these, especially with Raphael, if you look at these funny, these hands fall out. I mean, these fall right out of the sockets a little easier than I would like them to. Now, the good news is it's not like they're just falling flat out of the figure while he's standing there, but just posing him around, just putting weapons in his hands, I mean, it falls right out of that socket there. I've experienced it with my Raph and my Leo the most, so I don't know if it's going to be like an issue across the board, but it is definitely something to kind of watch out for. Now, in the torso there, it does look like we've got a joint in there. It is pretty stiff, though. There's not a lot of movement because of the big solid shell there on the back. But we do have those hinge joints at the thigh, so legs can go outwards, forwards, and backwards. A little loose on my Raphael, but I haven't experienced it being too bad on the rest of the figures there. Swivel at the thigh, double joints at the knees. Here's where you can see what I was talking about with like the really broken up sculpt from that knee joint. And then the ankles there, you can see will rock side to side. And they do have a joint in there that's supposed to allow them to pivot forwards and backwards, like the hinge right there, as you can see. But it's very tight. And also, the sculpt of the big feet hit right here, so they don't actually come forwards very far, which will sometimes result in some difficulty posing these guys standing, because I've noticed that they're all a little bit back heavy because of the shells, and unfortunately we can't get those feet to get as flat as I would like them to sometimes. It just takes a little bit of work, I think, to find the right way to stand them. So all in all, I think the articulation is decent on these guys. The mobility isn't huge. Like I said, the butterfly joints are there, but you're not going to move back too far or forwards too far. And one of the other things I've really noticed is that the limbs seem to be made of a bit of a softer plastic, and a lot of times, like when you're trying to articulate them, you can see how the shoulder here is like sticking when I'm trying to raise the arm up, and it like kind of separates the arm from this peg right here instead of just like raising the shoulder. You have to like really deliberately grab up here towards the shoulder and kind of pop it up. You can see it like snapped there to snap up. So it's just one of those things where you have to kind of just be mindful of that. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, other than the fact that the hands fall out of the sockets so easy on there. But otherwise, I think it's pretty decent. All right, so these guys come with a slew of accessories. We'll go ahead and start with Raphael because all of them do have unique accessories there. So first of all, it's worth mentioning that all of these turtles come with a swappable head. Now, the swappable heads are really nice because these are sort of like their non-battle heads. These heads have pupils in the eyes. They almost have a bit more of a cartoony look to them. But so like, you know, we've got our very angry battle faces, and then we've got a bit more relaxed faces. Raph's face, not so relaxed because he is still Raphael after all. But when you pull these out of the packaging, you're going to notice that the bandanas are separate from the heads. There are two of them included, but with all of the turtles, it does look like that the two bandanas are the same sculpt for each of the turtles. And I guess that they're here just so that each head gets their own bandana. However, since they are swappable, I would have really liked to see some difference in the overall sculpt. It would be nice to have like a bandana that's blowing in the wind, but maybe also one that's laying down on the shoulder so that you can swap between them. But it does look like that the bandanas with each figure are the same sculpt there. Now, when it comes to swapping off the head, I would definitely recommend removing this bandana right here to actually pull the head off, because that joint is so tight, as I mentioned. It actually takes a bit of work to get that popped off, and then when you're swapping heads for the first time especially, it's going to take quite a bit of pressure to pop that down in place, and I would not want you to snap the peg on these things. So always remove those before we are swapping the heads, but there you go, you can get a completely different look. I didn't talk about this yet, but I should point out, I do have kind of a nasty paint slop on the eye on the battle head on Raphael. He's the only one that's like that, so it's a bit unfortunate, but it's probably just like one of those things that happens sometimes. So hopefully not a widespread issue with this guy. So, of course, each of the figures do come with their unique signature weapons, like Raphael has his size, and you might have already seen that I did store them on his back just a little bit ago, so we can do that. Each of these figures also comes with a whole bunch of hands. They have 6 hands total, and it's a mixture of different types of grips and stuff. For example, with Raphael, we've got a couple different grips here, some of which will allow him to just hold on to the size on the handle, like just a normal handle grip there, but some of them have the unique fingers so that he can put his fingers through the blades, which of course is my preferred way to display my Raphael. I will say the fingers on these figures are very stiff. So another thing to be wary of when you're putting the weapons in the hands, because it's going to be a bit tough. But as you can see, we can actually get those fingers around all of the blades on the sai, and I like that quite a bit. I think that's a great way to display Raphael. Now he's got an extra set of weapons as well if you'd rather use the tonfas. He actually does come with the tonfas. Of course, we've got a tighter grip hand for the tonfas as well, so that is really nice. And another accessory that Raphael has that I really like is Ninja Stars. I mean, come on, that's a classic Ninja Turtles toy weapon, but one of the things I love about this is that Raphael has a place to store the Ninja Stars. Look, that's what this extra belt is that is strapped around his chest. You could put all 3 Ninja Stars there. You know, that's one of those things I always love, where you have somewhere to store the weapons on the figure. That is really awesome. The only downside to this is they don't actually clip in there very good. Like, if you are posing this figure around, they are definitely going to fall out. So you're going to want to get your pose and then put these things in the holsters. I only know that because while I was shooting these guys, it was driving me nuts how often these were falling out of the holsters there. But otherwise, I do like that quite a bit. So that's our Raphael. So here is our Michelangelo. Like I mentioned, he is the smaller of the group there. I also like how even all of their bandanas are different. Like, look at this. Mikey's got this much shorter bandana tie in the back. Again, he comes with 2 of them, and they are both the same sculpt. His extra head is kind of adorable because he's got a big smile on his face, and he's winking. So that is pretty fun. Same story there. I would definitely remove the bandana piece from the back before you do the head swap on there. And then he comes with his signature nunchucks, of course, which I do have stored on his back. And I just popped the bandana off while removing those. So the nunchucks are interesting on this figure because they just have a plastic rope holding them together. It's not a bendy or anything like that, so they're just kind of like this. This is just the way the nunchucks are. You can kind of bend them to manipulate them a little bit, but they don't really hold their shape. They do fit right there on the backside. I will point out, Mikey's got these extra little holsters or pockets on the front that I have no idea what they go to because they don't really hold the nunchucks. These are too big for that, so I don't know exactly what those are for. Now, he does have the gripping hands that will hold those nice and tightly, but he's also got a bunch of other interchangeable hands, like he's got the closed fist, he's got open hands, and he's also got this one hand with like a point, like he's pointing his finger upwards or pointing towards the foes. So some fun different ways you can mix and match the parts there. And just like Raph, he does come with a second set of weapons, being the nunchucks with the sickle blade on there, which I know have a real name, but you know, I'm always bad about that. These look like they have a chain on there, but again, it's just plastic painted a nice shiny silver, which is nice, but they're not bendy. They just kind of sit the way they sit. And again, those also don't fit in those holsters on the front. I really have no idea what these are for. If you know, please tell me. He doesn't have any other accessories that would fit in there. So here's our Donatello. I do really like this look for this particular character. He is tall and he is skinny. He's also kind of got some real loose joints up there at the thighs, specifically with his left leg. So sometimes getting him to stand is a bit tough. Like, it just kind of gives out a little bit. So that's a bit unfortunate. You can see he's got the signature bow staff, which is holstered on his back there. It's a bit of a shorter bow staff. I like Donnie when you can like put the bow staff on the ground. So it's a bit tougher to do that, but I don't know, that's probably more practical for a weapon. I have no idea, actually. He's got a couple of different hands as well, so he's got like this one with a really tight grip there, which is good for holding on to the bow staff. He's got closed fists. Of course, you can get two-handed grips on the bow staff. He's also got a pair of open hands there, which is very cool. And then like this one hand right here that I use for the bow staff also sort of has like the one finger up, which I like he's pointing at his big brain, you know, because he's the smart one. I forgot to mention his interchangeable head is also kind of cute because he too has a big ol' smile on his face. He's got those big brown pupilled eyes there, so you can swap that out. You've got the two identical bandana straps, so you can put those on the back. But he does have some extra accessories as well. Instead of an extra weapon, he's got gadgets, which is awesome. So first of all, he's got this very cool pair of goggles. And these are really nice. I mean, look at the paint deco on there. Shiny silver. There's lots of colors on the lenses. That will fit right over his head and go over his eyes, just like so, which is very cool. It's a little loose on there, but you got to slide it down. You might even want to remove the bandana on the back to help it just a little bit, but it does fit nicely over his head. And then he's got the little robotic gauntlet thing, which I know is a thing like from the original Mirage comics. So that's actually kind of cool. And that will slide right over like his fist hand there and actually stays on the hand pretty good. So really fun stuff with Donnie. And lastly, that brings us to the leader of the team, Leonardo, who is probably my favorite of this batch. I just think he's got a really great look to him there. I didn't really point this out before, but it is definitely most notable with Leo because he's got the longest bandana straps, but you can turn those since they're removable on that peg. So if you want them to kind of, you know, look like they're blowing straight back or maybe more upwards, whatever works best for your display, you can rotate those around, and that is actually pretty cool. On his back, you can see his sword sheaths where he does have his katanas painted with a nice shiny silver. I do have a one word of warning with Leonardo. Just like I told you guys to make sure you remove these bandana straps when removing the head, I would also urge you to be very careful of where you're placing your hands on Leo, because these are really hard to get off that ball joint sometimes, and you do not want to squeeze onto these sword sheaths. Unfortunately, these are a very hard plastic, and with just a little pressure earlier, I snapped this one off. It looks like it was just factory glued to the other one, which is why it came off so easy. So I actually just super glued it back on, and it's staying pretty well. I actually did that while I was shooting pictures. Otherwise, I would have showed you. I should have saved that to show you. But I still want to warn you, I don't want you guys to like place your thumb here while you're pulling this off and then snap that off by mistake. So just be mindful of where you're gripping the figure when swapping out that head. This is the extra head that he comes with. It's very cool looking there with, again, he's got more of a stern face, just like Raph, but he's got the pupils in there. So you can swap that on if you prefer that instead of the open mouth and the widened out eyes. So Leo's got a bunch of interchangeable hands as well, which includes like some open hands here. And then he's got two different grips. He's got kind of more of a loose grip, but he's also got this really tight grip, which I gotta say also, like, because they have 3 fingers on their hands, the grip looks weird. It looks awkward. I mean, but it makes sense, and it also works really well. Like, if I were to take the sword here and place it through that hand, you can see, like I said, the fingers are very rigid on these hands, so be careful when you're placing the weapons in there, but they do get a very tight grip, which is a good thing. So we'll go ahead and swap that hand on there just to show you. But aside from the typical katanas, he also comes with 2 of these short swords, these short blades, these dagger-like blades, so we could hold on to those as well. But I think my favorite accessory is the fact that he comes with these really awesome effects. They're like this translucent blue slash effect that just slides right over the katana blades just like that. He's the only one that came with an effect. I really kind of wish Mikey had like a spinning nunchuck effect, especially since they're designed the way they are, where they don't really pose all that good, because I love these sword slash effects. I think they work so very well for this figure, and the pose you can get with that is excellent. I love it. All right, guys, it's comparison time. I thought it would be a good idea to show these alongside some of the other modern TMNT action figures that you can pick up. I also threw the vintage TMNT figures in there just to show them, though those are the more recent reissues, just to point that out. But, you know, we got Mutant Mayhem in there. We've got the 2 versions of the Mirage Turtles from NECA, and we've got the Super 7 Ultimates in there. Kind of gives you a good idea of the styling difference between all these figures. Also shows you you the scale difference between the figures. In fact, I'll also go ahead and line up all those figures so you can really get a good idea for the scale. These guys are about mid-size, but they're also a smaller build, so they do scale a little bit smaller than a lot of the rest of those modern figures. So there you go, my friends. There is a look at the brand new San Diego Comic-Con exclusive versions of the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures from the Loyal Subjects. Just a reminder, there are retail versions of these coming as well, which I think are mostly the same. I don't know if they're going to have less parts, but the one big difference, of course, is that they won't have that black wash on there. They're a lot more clean looking. So, just a quick recap of everything. I do like the overall look of these guys. I think the sculpts are pretty great. I love seeing the IDW artwork represented in action figure form because it's something new and fresh and different from all the other TMNT figures that we've got out there so far. I think these are some of the best of what Loyal Subjects has done for Turtles so far. I do think that some of those articulation cuts are improved, though I will still argue that the mobility isn't as great as I think a lot of fans will like it to be. It still feels like you're kind of fighting against some of that articulation while you are posing them. Also, some of the fragility on there is a bit of an issue, so just be careful of that as well. Otherwise, I do think these are pretty fun figures overall. I'm happy to add them to my collection, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else this means for IDW. Will we get some of the original characters in this toy line? I think that would be pretty cool. So once again, I bought these while I was at San Diego Comic-Con. I think they're already sold out online, of course, but if you can find them on the secondary market, that would be the place to check. Otherwise, the retail versions are coming soon. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video. Until next time.